Hello, my name is Ben Robinson, and in this video, which is for my assessment, I'll be talking about stuff that I've learned this year at the University of Lincoln for my broadcast assessment and module. We'll be talking about what I've learned not only in this term but from perhaps the whole year, how the coronavirus affected sort of learning and how it affected my TV packages and just generally along those lines. In terms of what I have learnt this year in the broadcast module, I think that one of the things I've learned is that making a TV package is actually a lot more difficult than what it sort of says and looks on the tin, or the tin, yeah, because you've got time, a set amount of time to fill, but you need those shots to fill, and if you don't get all the shots, and say if you were in the actual field, if you don't get all those shots whilst you're out in the field before either going back into the television van, or as I've seen in some places, or back into the studio, and you don't get all those shots, you're stuck up. You're in a bit of a pickle there, to be honest, because you can't exactly go back out and say to them, "Oh, can we get these more shots? Can we go do this?" You've got that one opportunity to get those shots, and you need them timed right, you need them filmed right, you need a wide variation of shots just to try and fill the time and package. Say if it was 1 minute 30 in the instance of the assessment, um, then you've got to get not just five, six, or seven shots, you've got to get a whole shots because you don't want to be looking at the same shots for 10, 15 to 20 seconds at a time. You want nice 5, 6, okay, maybe a little bit longer in some instances, but a wide variation. Um, another thing that I've learned this year is that I've learned more about Adobe Premiere and Audition. In terms of Audition, which is the for the radio assessment, um, I never knew how to do a multi-track session or anything like that, and I actually really enjoyed doing that because it was different to what I had learned in first year, and I was like learning different and perhaps new things. And although some of my classmates had learned it, I was a little bit behind, and I actually think that in the end I got it, understood it, and it was actually really useful to learn because if I hadn't have learned it, I don't think, okay, maybe I would next year. I don't think I would have learned it at all, and I think in terms of Premiere, I've learnt a lot from not just tutors and um, teachers, etc., but also from my classmates because some might do more broadcasting options. Those who get involved with LSJ might know a lot more than those who don't, and I think I've learnt a lot for myself from my classmates as well. And it's also just little things like Googling, and you don't have to, even though it's always advised. And I think certainly at times this year I've learnt that it's just best to ask tutors to give you a helping hand, of because I know there's been a few times this term where things have gone wrong. I've not asked, and it looks silly on the actual footage itself when we've watched it back in class. But I think that's just part of the learning curve, and I think ultimately I wouldn't change that for anything, because once I had learned it and been told that no, that was wrong, you needed to do this, I think it would have been so much more easier to say, oh, I just don't care, or anything like that, or something along those lines. Um, in terms of stuff that I've also done outside to develop my skills in workshops and that sort of thing, obviously, I think if I look at it from the opposite perspective, I perhaps haven't done enough because I wasn't really prominent, or I didn't really do much NSJ work this year. I was more either Link Sport or Siren, and so I think in terms of broadcast TV, perhaps I was a little bit behind. But I'd done a little bit of editing for like football packages in terms of Lincoln United. I think I've done one or two, maybe, I can't quite remember, but I definitely did one where it was like 1 minute and 30 seconds because the game was pretty boring itself. But I done one where it was like 1 minute and 30 seconds, just brief highlights and nothing more than that really. But that doesn't really sell it enough. Um, and yeah, and I think I'd quite like to do more of those next year. Perhaps if the Link Sport team were to continue doing that, I'd definitely like to get involved more with that because it develops your skills more nicely. And it was actually really fun to make as well, though it does require a lot of patience with my laptop, which is very slow to say the least. The story ideas that I had for the assessment, so we needed two story ideas for packages, and I'll be honest, I should have done it a lot earlier and done it and got it sorted a lot earlier instead, but I actually left it sort of until the last 3-4 weeks, and by that time we were sort of getting to the point of, well, are we going to be at uni? Are we not going to be at uni? And um, so the first idea that I had, I actually created a list of like ideas that I could do, and it was difficult because some of those I didn't know which ones would come to fruition, which ones wouldn't, and so ultimately I was sort of left out on a limb doing little bits and bobs here and there. And so the first story idea that I had was to talk to Lyndon Cricket Club about how their up and coming season might go, getting nice shots, because in my head I was essentially doing it in my head before I had even got to even trying to interview them or being allowed to come and interview them, because I was thinking about how the shots might look in the nets and who I could talk to, who would be most appropriate, and along those sort of lines. But they didn't get back to me from contacting them, and I don't blame them at all. Obviously, it's very strange times. We didn't know 1 week to the next what we were going to be doing. Um, so there was a whole load of other ideas, but one idea that did sort of nearly come to fruition was the SU closing, which was after the coronavirus sort of lockdown had begun almost. I had like I during the sort of week that we had I had between the uni closure and sort of going home myself because the official lockdown had begun. Um, I'd got loads of different shots of sort of around the uni, sort of close ups of the posters that had said that the Swan and the Tower Bar were all closed and that sort of thing. And I did that in preparation for an interview, but obviously government guidelines have suggested no sort of face to face or for interviews or anything like that, and that obviously changed our course. But the SU were actually really compromising and helpful in sorting it out because they got the SU leaders, and I've not looked at all of them, but the first two or three were Cassie Coakley, the president, and so she sort of answered my questions through little videos of them. So I was hoping that I would be able to put those into a package and use sort of, it would have looked weird, definitely, but I was hoping that I could have organised it round like that, and I think that would have been a good way to sort of show my skills of adapting to circumstances and just dealing with what I've got and how I can sort of make it look better than what it may look, because it was a difficult circumstances to deal with, obviously. And I think the main thing that I would, if we're looking towards next year and obviously over the summer and going into the final year, um, I think I'd quite like to tighten up my editing skills on Premiere Pro, because I think that's one of the most common feedbacks that I've got this year of you sort of need to tighten it up, get that cut perfect. And I think too many times I've sort of been a bit lazy and just sort of left it in there. But actually, I need to tighten it up and get it perfect, because otherwise, going into the final year, you want to look the best for graduate prospects. So, yeah, I hope that I can't think of anything else to sort of. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but I can't think of anything else that I can sort of improve drastically next year. I just need to improve overall as a broadcaster. Okay, thank you very much.